All right, welcome back. Next up is Václav, the Bastl man, Toyota Vangelis. We'll be talking about his very DIY setup, which I'm very excited to see. So take it away, Václav.
Hej, jo. Jo, anglicky, dobře. Yeah, I do a lot of different like nerdy things also like at work because I one of the design team at Bastl Instruments, but I thought it would be better in this occasion to just show the stuff that I do when I like don't work. So like this is the kind of stuff that I do when I'm on a holiday and on the weekends. And thanks for this opportunity because this weekend I did actually do some work on this because I thought like, hey, it would be fun to show some progress, but still it's work in progress. It always is. I only have weekends and holidays for this. This is my setup that I use when I play live music as Toyota Vangelis, and there is a bunch of controllers in it. I mean, there is this, which is just a bunch of knobs, and this is like something you've seen, but I think this is something you probably haven't seen. Yeah, dobrý. Basically there was like a time when I discovered I like singing, but I've never been a trained singer, but I like to use my voice for singing purposes, and there was a time when I hacked one Roland box so it would have a MIDI input, and then basically I could play it with a keyboard, and this is how it would sound like. So I would use one hand to play on a keyboard. Hey, and my voice is doing still the same tone. Hey. You get it, right? So there is a plugin in the computer that's responsible for this. In my case, it's called Manipulator. So this plugin takes in the audio from the microphone, and it takes in the MIDI data from the keyboard, and it works similar to an autotune. If you know, autotune is a piece of software that takes your voice and checks like what kind of pitch you're singing, and it just like makes it in tune. It just like helps you a little bit. It measures the frequency, the tone you're singing, and if it's off, it like helps you to sing right in pitch. But you kind of need to sing the tone, the pitch approximately. And this is like a similar technology, but the pitch is defined by playing on the keyboard. So I call it manual autotune. So when I discovered this, I had a phase where I would just, whoa,
Really?
yo, I can use this. Takže, yeah, wireless gear not being reliable is gonna be main theme of this presentation once I settle the basics. So thank you for such a nice skit to introduce this. Yeah, so there was a time when I would be performing like, right. But I would always need to have like one hand on the keyboard. I couldn't do like that much performatively, and there is one magical place in the mountains of Slovenia near the river Socha, actually right at the river, there is a place where I go every summer. And this community is called PIF Camp, PIF Camp. And it's a Slovenian organized hacker camp, but it's very international. I highly recommend to check it out because there is a lot of like-minded people that just do stuff and you apply with the project and you probably don't really do the project, but you hang out with others and do 10 other different projects and don't finish any of them. But anyway, it's a week in the mountains each summer, and this is like one of the ongoing projects that I keep bringing there. And it's this controller, and like what it is, it's basically it's a keyboard that sits on top of a microphone. So what I would do here, I can do here. So this one is really simple. It just has buttons. Let me show you. So, no brush. So this one has, it's, I don't know, maybe it's like 5-ish year old now. It's been like improving and gaining new functions eventually. So there is a bunch of buttons, and it works like this, that it should be like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, like a scale. It's like 1 octave. There is a mode which would be a little bit complicated right now because I don't have more hands than to go to. Anyway, there is a mode where it's chromatic. So it would be like C, C sharp when I be pressing those two buttons, D, D sharp, E. So you can also play chromatically. Practically, it's easier to do a filtering in the DAW, like when I play music. So for each song, it switches a scale, and I don't need to think about it that much. It's easier to play. So it's like playing a flute or maybe a trumpet, but with the microphone and singing. So this is the first. So there is 1 octave, obviously. That's a first limitation, because so this construction, it's let's show it like this. This construction, so the microphone is suspended in this cage, and it needs to be suspended because the buttons click. Right? So that's something I can't really work around with, and this is kind of the minimal footprint of how big it can be, which makes it pretty much unusable for people with small hands. And I tend to be on the bigger hand scale. It's not a flex, it's just... So, yeah, so my hand is relatively big, so this is for the 4 fingers, and here there is some more controls for my thumb. And typically, like, this is the important button that most people can't reach, and this one shifts the whole scale down half an octave. So in that way, I have 1.5 octave. So it would go like this. You get it, right? So I would sing a song like this. 10 hodin, 12 hodin, spím, je to málo, v ruce krystal, pak najdu sever, hvězdy na max, je tu celkem chladno, vítr šustí tím správným směrem, tenhle s neobejdem, bacha, je tu bláto, peřinou škubnu, oči na mezeru, o hodinu víc a v hlavě prázdno. Přece víš, jak já jsem to dřív mýval rád. And so on. So this is one of my songs. I could have moved the camera right. Look, it's a lot of things to handle, so tell me if I'm doing something wrong. Yo, yo, yo. Meow, 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 meow. So, and there is a little wheel that moves like this. So, can you see it? It's a bit hard to show. Anyway. So it's a trim pot with a little capacitor stuck into it, and this is a switcher for octaves. So I can also extend the range. So I was singing in the high range, and if I move it down, so it's an octave switch. So I have 2.5 octaves. Vocal range. So that there is this button for talking in between songs, maybe, or if I want to shout something. Don't sound like this. I wouldn't want to sound like this. Then I would use this to sound like normal, like a normal person. Yeah, there is. Where is it? Here. So this is hard. So this thing is an accelerometer, and so it can basically detect also this. I don't think it's connected right now. This. Yeah. So yeah, I don't use it a lot. It's a gimmick. So that I'm sure I can do something more interesting with it. Anyway, and there is a light. You noticed, right? So this whole thing is connected like this. So I'm using a MIDI cable to connect the whole controller to a hidden board inside of this suitcase. And some of you might know that MIDI as a protocol only uses 2 pins of a cable, but the cable has 5 pins. So I'm using the other 3 pins. One of them is for ground, one of them is for power, and one of them is for the light. So I have a little envelope follower, a preamp, analog one built somewhere in the suitcase, and that one lights up the light. So it does the job. Maciej was talking about the lovely Atmega 328. This is one of them, taken from a micro granny. So yeah, this is maybe I can take out the microphone to show you the insides. So yeah, it's built on a proto board. I never took the time to create a PCB. That's what I do for a living. So I'm not gonna do it on my holidays. So basically, the whole chip is wired directly to the buttons, and yeah, you see the lights and so on. Yeah, I can send it actually. Why not? This one is actually fragile. Last summer, I played at a festival. And there was so much smoke on the stage that I made one step into a void and stopped myself crushing the microphone on a speaker system. So, I forgot to say the this is the most important piece, this little plastic thing here, that makes it rest on my hand like this. So then basically the fingers are free to move. That's like the most important feature of this whole thing. Without this, it wouldn't work. Yeah, I can send it. So, yeah, so this summer I decided to make a new version. And I decided to make a wireless version. And I decided to try to make it, or at least prototype it in a way that also maybe people with small hands would be able to play it. And so that comes with the fact that I acquired a new skill this year, and it's obviously 3D printing. So this is basically trying to imitate the one I sent, the original version. So this was like the first printout where I was trying to figure out how I could make it. So like the first design change I wanted to do is to remove buttons that click. So I would not need to like suspend the microphone in a cage. That should technically lower how. So the problem is this: you have a hand. This is how much you can open it. And then when you put a microphone in the hand, you see how much space is left there. That's where the whole controller needs to fit. Okay? I assume this limitation is why nobody attempted to do it before me. So there is not a lot of space for electronics or whatnot. So this version 1, whoop, I don't know, one of these is version 2. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so I was just trying to figure out how many touch points I can fit. So this is a version that has like 2 rows. So yeah, on this one, I had like the same idea, like 2 PCBs that are 90 degrees from each other. And on this one, I tried to like make it 1 PCB. And for the thumb, I would have something that kind of sticks out like this, right? So that's a progress. And on this prototype, I figured I can try to do 3 rows for these fingers and bunch of touch points for the thumb. And yeah, it ended up in this. So this is what I built this summer. Yeah. So this version has it has a bunch of buttons, and it has a lot of the silver things. What is it? So the silver things are the touch points. That's screws. So these are the touch points. That's what replaces the buttons. And these buttons, they kind of switch modes. They more or less switch the octave on this prototype anyway. So let me show you what's inside. So now this one is built around the wireless mic. So there is quite a difference between how thick a wireless and normal mic is. So I first actually designed it for a normal mic. And then I was like, why am I doing this when I'm doing it wireless? So I need to design it for a wireless mic. Yeah, and it turns out there is really not a lot of space, but this is what you can fit in. So this thing is called Adafruit Feather. It's a development board with ESP32 chip on it. So, wow. So, and it has a bunch of other cool things on it. So, The ESP32 chip is designed to work with like wireless stuff. So it has a Wi-Fi capability and it has Bluetooth. And it also has USB. And another one of those things that it has is that it has a charging circuit for a battery, which is right here. So this black thing, that's a battery. It attaches directly on the board. There is a connector. Yeah, I can't point. This is the connector for the battery. And you can charge the battery with the USB. Then there is this where the yellow cable goes on the board. They have like their own connector, which is, I believe, to the same thing Matěj was talking about, I2C. And I think this connector is called something like something QT, like, which I think it's really cute. Then basically there is two sensor boards. One of them is for for the touch sensing. So that's a board that can handle 12 touch points. And the other one is accelerometer. And they kind of just connect with these pre-made cables. And yes, they're soldered on the board, but yeah. So I think the bigger one here, this one, just connects to all those screws, aka the touch points. So, so this thing, it works. Look, it lights up when I. There's some light on it, or isn't it? Oh, there's too much light. You can't see it. Anyway, it works. Maybe I can connect it so I can show you. Yo. Yo, 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 yo. Meow, 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 meow. So, I don't have the talking button on this one yet. I mean, it's ready, I just didn't implement it yet. Anyway, so there is 3 rows of buttons. So I have the 1.5 octave, that's easy. And then basically if these buttons that are here in between the screw rows, they are for like low octave, high octave, and highest octave. And this one is not really used right now. Anyway, the buttons, like, they have like this function that I just said, but like mostly they help also to orient on the board, so I can like find where these touch points are, and these buttons really help with that. Also, there is this like another like thing that sticks out. That one helps me to find the main touch point here. Yeah, and then for the thumb, there is a bunch of these guys. So yeah, and so basically what I was trying to figure out is this ergonomy where I can basically have my fingers free to move around, play it, and also be able to do something with the thumb. Yeah. So, hey, yeah. And this is what happens, like, kind of all the time with wireless stuff. So I'm not touching anything, but there is still signal. And that's really annoying. So you sometimes, like, it sometimes misses a message. I don't know why. And it's been doing it. So the journey, wireless journey. So doing it without wires turns out to be a challenge. So the first thing I tried was Bluetooth MIDI. So there is a library for Bluetooth MIDI, and it works. It works actually pretty well. Maybe I can try to go on my computer and show you. Audio MIDI setup. This is where you kind of need to go. Oh shit. No, well, I don't know what next to do. Here. Okay, it doesn't show up anymore. It would show up here and you would need to click, or maybe I need to click this. I don't know. Anyway, you would need to go into this menu and click a button connect, and then it connects. It's relatively simple, but the problem is, like, when you lose the signal, you would need to go back to this window and click the button again. And I can't do it when I'm performing, really. So, so this is a Mac thing. Maybe it works differently on another machine. But if you would want the device, hey, stop. It says but. Tak asi hej. Co se stalo tady? Hej, ani jeden nefunguje. Jo, díky. Maybe this one will work. Jo. Aha. Jo. Tohle. Ne. Tohle funguje, ne. Nevadí. Tak já budu, I'm gonna talk in very annoying voice. That's just one pitch from now on. God. It's hard to focus this way. What was that one? Yeah, so Bluetooth MIDI. You can have it reconnect automatically if you do pairing with a pin on the Bluetooth device. So, and this pairing with a pin, it's close to impossible to do with the libraries, with the open source libraries that are there. And I tried, and it didn't work. I still need to go back and try to prompt it with AI. Maybe it could figure it out, but the MIDI libraries, or basically anything that's like this ecosystem, is super underdocumented. So it's quite hard to work with. Yo, hezky. It's much easier to talk like this. So the Bluetooth. So the second issue is that somebody else could connect to it if it was not secure connection with a pin. And I also don't want that. So secure connection with Bluetooth, I know it's possible, other people have done it, but nobody shared it online. There is no open source project I could find to really do this reliably. Besides that, when it worked, it was still like missing messages. So there would be hanging notes. It would just, I would need to like reset it. And I know I can like brute force it in the code and try to make sure it always turns off the notes. But I didn't do it yet because I'm just trying to see how reliable it is. I actually built also this. I don't see the camera because there is the light. So there is a small jack. Can you see it? Yeah. There is a jack, and that's a wired MIDI output. So with that one, it works really reliably, and wirelessly, not so much. So version 2, I did basically consult with ChatGPT in the first trials, and it told me Wi-Fi should be more reliable. So I was okay, let's try MIDI over Wi-Fi. And there is a thing called RTP MIDI, which is basically MIDI over network. And there is a library for that, and it works. but you need to go into another menu on the Mac and then connect somehow, and it works. But then if it disconnects, it sometimes connects back, but sometimes it doesn't. And I couldn't figure out how to do it, and that's a Mac thing again. So I figured out that maybe Macs don't really want to have reliable wireless connections, or at least not in the current state of like open source libraries for these kinds of things. So now I'm on a third iteration, and then basically I decided to do something else. And this thing that was hiding here the whole time in the shadows, this is another feather. And what it does, it acts as a USB MIDI device in my computer. So the moment I connect to my computer sees, there is a MIDI device. And it creates a Wi-Fi network. You can probably see it if you go to Wi-Fi settings. It's called Toyota Microphone Evangelion. So that comes from this guy. Let me disconnect this. Okay. So when I connect it, there's a red light, and that means the microphone didn't connect yet. And when I turn on this, it goes green, and it always connects. And there is a password to the network. I'm not gonna tell you the password, but yeah, it works. It always reconnects, and it's awesome. So in this phase, I didn't really have a lot of time to spend in the codes, and I was like just really lazy this weekend. So basically I spent this weekend just like prompting the code for these two devices in Copilot, which is also Microsoft, but that one is somehow connected to the internet, so it can actually read the libraries it's suggesting me to use. ChatGPT was always like doing mistakes in how the functions are called and which argument is which. So, yeah, and it works. It's extremely dumb, though. You need to actually be able to code to be able to get good results from the code it gives you. But it's like it's really dumb. It's like if like I would give a task to my dog and it like maybe does it, but like it basically codes like my dog, and you constantly need to like say, hey, I know how you mean this, but this is not gonna work. So it's possible to code with Copilot. I mean, it does a lot of things correctly that I would be like struggling to do, but you constantly need to prompt it, read the code, figure out what the code does, and then prompt it again. But it was okay. That was my weekend, and I was basically prompting it two codes. One is this bridge that just takes USB MIDI, translates it to Wi-Fi MIDI in both directions. It sounds really simple, but for the Copilot to do it right, it took a while. And this thing, yeah, is the other end. So right now it works, I would say, slightly more reliably than the original Bluetooth version. But still I'm getting hanging notes. And I don't know why yet. So there is a library called, I think, UDP that just sends packets over the Wi-Fi network. There are 3 bytes long as like MIDI packets. And it should simply work, but sometimes it just loses the packets. Yeah. I don't know what to do about it. I'm trying I think I'm gonna try to prompt the Copilot again to try to write me a test how to find lost packets or something like this. But I checked the code. The code should be technically working, but still not super reliable. So there is different ways how I could brute force the whole thing. Like for instance, this controller, it directly sends MIDI notes. So it interprets all the touch points and then decides what kind of MIDI note it is. And I could totally brute force the whole thing into just constantly streaming the state of all the touch points. And I could just interpret it here and turn it into MIDI messages. That would be one way to brute force it. So basically I would not lose packets. And so when it sends a note on and a note off. And if you lose a note off, there is gonna be a hanging note, and it's not gonna shut up. It's always gonna hang there. I can also brute force it to send all the note offs once I release all the touch points and so on. I didn't do that because I'm still trying to come up with a reliable protocol. So far, not very successfully. So that's me complaining about wireless stuff and AI coding. So it's gonna get better, I think, the AI coding, the wireless stuff. I'm not so sure. How long did I talk for? Should I still say something, or this is too much?
You're good.
I'm good, means what? I don't know what the time is. My phone is right here. Huh?
The time is good. You talked for 40 minutes, so
okay.
You're good.
Okay.
If you want.
Yeah, sure. We can, or I can send this also if you want. And also this. Hey. I guess the battery is dead. Anyway, I can send it just that you can try it in your hand. I have a bunch of other things on the table, and maybe I can just briefly show you my setup, but... Or I don't have to, it's okay. Maybe I should leave it here. So thanks for listening to my TED Talk. My name is Václav. I make music as Toyota Vangelis, and I hope this wasn't too much torture, and I'm excited to see more of the nerdy stuff. Thank you. Questions, right?
I have one.
Yes, please.
I'm curious about your experience with doing stuff with the touchpads or the screws. Did it work and it just works, or was it really hard, or is it unreliable? How can you summarize that?
That's the most reliable part of the whole thing.
Okay.
Or Yeah, it's pretty reliable. I forgot the name of the chip, but if the controller gets to you, you can look it up. But I think we're using the same chip in one of the prototypes at Bastl, and it's actually really reliable. Then, so because I have more touch points than 12, there is 4 more touch points that are done with the ESP32 itself, because it also has a capacity to read touch points. Those I didn't spend that much time on. That's where the talk button is gonna be. And so far they seemed like reliable-ish. And if they're not, I'm just gonna put another one of those chips. Yeah, so maybe I wanted to say at this point it's just like my thing, but I've been asked about it so many times, so I thought maybe at some point, if it's not like discriminating people for having small hands, I could try to open source it. Otherwise, I think it would be too much of a frustrating project. And I think with this topology or with this ergonomics that I figured out, I think it might be possible. But you tell me if you can reach the screws with your fingers or not. I'm happy to hear some complaints. So obviously I did it all again on a proto board. I could design a circuit board and possibly do a workshop or open source it or whatever. So that's kind of like a plan for the future, but let's see how many holidays I need to get there. More questions?
Yes.
It's working, all right. I have 2 questions. So one of them, you said that you work with MIDI protocol through the Wi-Fi, and I don't have experience with it, but do you think it's good idea to try to run MIDI protocol through the wireless Wi-Fi because of the lost packages and things like that? Another question, which relates to the first one, is that you talk about the losting packages, and do you know where the packages were lost? It was, I don't know, because of the wireless connection, or it was that, I don't know, the microcontroller missed the release of the button or things like that?
I assume, as with all lost packages, they are with Česká pošta. But no, I didn't investigate yet, and I've never really worked with networked stuff and network protocols. So maybe some of you know more about packets. Like, this is the first time I'm saying I'm using packets, and I look like I know what I'm talking about, but I totally don't. So, and whether it's a good idea or not, I don't know. ChatGPT told me Wi-Fi should be more reliable than Bluetooth. I've been using wireless Bluetooth MIDI controllers for years, and they always been like super reliable, but like not in this incarnation with open source libraries, I guess. But again, I know I can brute force it to be like super stable and not lose any information. But at this point, it's a very streamlined protocol that from the controller itself, it sends note on, note off. And I could like send a lot more information to make sure the computer gets the correct information. However, if it would be, let's say, open sourced project at some point, and it would be a controller people would want to use, ideally, it would have the wired MIDI, USB MIDI, Bluetooth MIDI, and maybe Wi-Fi MIDI. And you could probably choose and test your setup, which one is more reliable. Besides like prompting it with GPT, I didn't really find any conclusive research made on the reliability of wireless protocols. So I'm just sharing the findings as I go right now. Thank you.
I think the definition of UDP is that it's okay with losing packages, from what I know. So maybe it's about using the protocol. There's different protocols you can use which are not okay with losing packages. I think. I was struggling with telecommunications, but I think it's like that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna ask Copilot to do it differently than UDP then.
Yeah, I think the other protocol that can be used instead of UDP is TCP, and that should be reliable.
Okay, great. See, this is what I need. This is what I need, please. I think there was more question.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about UDP. It's basically you're gonna lose packets, so you have to use TCP.
Yeah, awesome. As I said, Copilot is like my dog, so it's much better to have a crowd help me. So thank you so much. Any more questions? No. Then that's it, I guess. Thank you.